Every time I had to step away from the book and come back to reality where braid hands don't exist and I have to twist my hair myself, I was just really disappointed. Hi, hello, welcome to Pages in the Stars. My name is Ash. If you're new here, hello. If you're returning, welcome back. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below so you can be alerted to all my bookish, not bookish, and sometimes ranty content. We're in July, which means we are just a little bit more than halfway through the year. So why not freak out about the books that I've read this year and that I'm hoping to read this year and that I didn't read this year? Welcome to the mid-year book freakout tag. I've done the mid-year book freakout tag before. I think it was a few years ago. This year for the tag, I just pulled questions from the video that I filmed a few years ago and came up with some of my own questions. There was no specific set of questions from another creator that I necessarily pulled from for this tag video. It's kind of just a hodgepodge smorgasbord of questions. So let's jump right on into it. What was the best book that I've read so far in 2023? Easy question. All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This was the first book that I picked up this year when I quite honestly did not feel like reading at all. And what was my reward for reading this book? Emotional damage. But emotional damage in the best way possible. Sabaa Tahir does such a masterful job of storytelling, and All My Rage was no different. I loved the way that she told Noor and Salahuddin's stories and how they wove and crossed together with each other. I cried a lot while reading All My Rage. There were a lot of instances where I empathized deeply with one of the characters, or where I recognized something in one of the characters in myself, but there was one moment in All My Rage where something was revealed about one of the characters, and I had to put the book down because I was sobbing, and I had to walk away for a bit. I really implore you to pick up this book yourself because it is a beautiful, beautiful book, and I thoroughly loved it. It is probably going to be a book that I reread at some point when I am ready and I feel like I can handle it. But All My Rage is definitely one of the best books that I've read so far in 2023, and I highly recommend it for anyone else who is looking for a solid book to read. Best sequel that I've read all year. Okay, I gotta level with you. I have not done a whole lot of reading this year. I am just starting to pick up the pace with reading. But as far as the first half of the year, there wasn't a whole lot of reading done. So there wasn't a whole lot of variety for me to pick from for some of these questions. And that holds especially true for this question because I have not read any sequels to anything this year. So instead of just skip over this question, there's actually a sequel to a book that I read earlier that comes out later this year, and that is The Memory Thieves. Now, The Memory Thieves is the sequel to The Marvelers by Danielle Clayton. It is a middle grade fantasy about this young girl, Ella Duran, and her journey to the Arcanum School where she is supposed to learn different kinds of magic and how to hone her craft as a conjurer. I listened to a lot of The Marvelers on audiobook, and it was even more of an immersive experience than when I was reading it. One of the things that I really appreciated about The Marvelers is how Danielle Clayton built the world around the Marvelers, the Conjurers, the Arcanum School. I felt fully immersed in this world because there were so many little details that mattered. The thing that just had me grinning and smiling every time it was mentioned were the braid hands. I loved these ideas and concepts that were culturally significant. If I had read a story when I was a little kid about an enchanted pair of hands that you could put different spells on to do different types of styles, do you know how much that would have meant to little 9, 10, 11-year-old Ash to read that kind of story? I mean, it matters to me now as an adult getting to read stories with these concepts and ideas, but I can only imagine how much it would have mattered to late elementary school and middle school me to read a book with a concept or a piece of magical technology like that. Every time the braid hands were mentioned, I smiled. And then every time I had to step away from the book and come back to reality where braid hands don't exist and I have to twist my hair myself, I was just really disappointed. The braid hands weren't the only things. There were a lot of other details within the magic systems and the magical technology that existed that I really enjoyed reading. And because of that, I'm really excited for the Memory Thieves. I want to get back into the Arcanum world. I want to get back into the world of the Marvelers and the Conjurers. I did not want to step out of that world because there were so many things in that world that made it feel like home. And I remember when I went to the launch for the Marvelers, one of the things that Danielle Clayton had talked about was creating these little details within the world that would be culturally significant. So one of the things that she had talked about was the I forget the name of it in the book, but like the banquet hall where all of the kids at the school eat, was having different foods from different cultures for all of the kids to eat, so that, you know, kids would be able to eat their cultural food while at the school. So reading about all of the different types of foods and how they acted, because of course it's a magic school, so they have to have, the food has magical attributes. I absolutely loved, and I want to get back into the world, and I want to see where Danielle takes the story next, because the last, I want to say, third of that book, there were some things that were revealed, and if you know me, one of my things that I joke about is I threw the book. I didn't throw the book. I wanted to throw the book, but there was nowhere where I could throw it where it would safely land and not be damaged. There were some things in like the last third of the Marvelers that invoked the I want to throw this book in a good way feeling. But I did not. So all of that to say, I've spent so much time talking about the Marvelers, all of that to say, the sequel that I am looking forward to this year is the Memory Thieves, the sequel to the Marvelers, which I believe comes out in September. So that's that. New release you haven't read yet, but you really want to. The Do's and the Donuts of Love by Adiba Jagardar. I loved Adiba's first two books, The Henna Wars and Hani and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating. So when I found out that she had another book coming out that involved a baking competition, I was sold. Because one of the things that I don't do on camera ever is I bake a lot. It's one of my favorite things to do. So when I found out that she had a book coming out that was going to involve some type of baking competition, I was immediately sold on it. Question number 4. A book that has been on your shelf forever that you haven't read yet. I debated whether or not to put this question on here because I'm essentially calling myself out because I want to read this book, but I can't bring myself to do it. And that is A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. It is the last book in the Ember and the Ashes quartet. And I have had A Sky Beyond the Storm for a while now. And I cannot bring myself to read it. Because I know whatever lies between the pages of that book, I am not going to be prepared for. I also have a really hard time letting go of fictional characters that I've become attached to. You can go watch my breakdown and review of Zatch Bell Volume 15 if you don't believe me, because it's a sob fest. But I have a really hard time letting go of fictional characters that I've grown attached to or that I've really come to enjoy. And I know that at some point, I'm going to have to say goodbye to someone in this series. I am not prepared for the devastation that that book is going to bring to me personally. I have heard people rant in a good way and rave about A Sky Beyond the Storm. I can't bring myself to do it, y'all. I can't. At some point, I will. And Amber, if you're watching this video, I know. At some point, I will get to it. By the way, if you are not subscribed to my friend Amber Dior, go subscribe to her right now. She's awesome, and she also talks about books. So I'm going to get there. I will get there. Maybe this year. Maybe this year I will get to A Sky Beyond the Storm. I have to prepare myself for it, and right now I'm just not prepared for it. So that's that. It's sitting up, you can't see it. It's sitting up on my shelf here with the rest of the Ember and the Ashes series. I'll get there. I promise. Most anticipated release for the second half of 2023. This comes as a shock to no one. It is A Song of Salvation by Alicia Dow. If you took a sip of water for every time I mentioned the Sound of Stars, Kindred, A Song of Salvation universe on my channel, you would be the most hydrated person on the planet. Because I go on about these books quite often. A Song of Salvation follows Zaira, a reincarnated god, a pilot named Wesley Daniels, and a DJ named Ruben as they journey to Earth to try to stop an intergalactic war. I cannot explain how excited I am for this book, not just because I genuinely love Alicia's writing and how she tells stories, but also because it has been confirmed that this book is going to take place in the same universe as The Sound of Stars and The Kindred. The other thing that we know about A Song of Salvation is that it is going to contain cameos with characters from The Sound of Stars and The Kindred, which has been confirmed by this graphic that Alicia posted on Twitter last week. So if we see Ellie and Morris again, I am actually going to lose it. It's currently July 8th. 3 days it's too far away. I need this book now. Next question. Any DNFs this year? Yes. So earlier this year, I started reading The Poppy War, and I had to stop. I know a lot of people love this book, and my reasons for DNFing it were not because I thought it was a bad book. I knew the time and the history in which R.F. Kuang pulled from to write the story. I read the trigger warnings for this book extensively, and I still couldn't finish the book. I want to reiterate that the reason that I DNF'd this book was not because I think it's a bad book or I don't like the writing. It's simply because at the time when I was reading it, I was not in a place where I could continue reading it. I'm hoping that this DNF turns into a not DNF and I finish the book because it's definitely a book and a trilogy that I want to finish. It just wasn't the right time for me to read it. So at some point this year, I'm going to attempt to finish the book and then move on to the others in the trilogy. But again, I did enjoy what I read so far. I just had to DNF it because I was not in the right space to read it at that time. The last question that I have here, new favorite author. A few weeks ago, I read The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kahn. And I want to stress the fact that contemporary romance is usually not my thing. I am not a big contemporary romance girly. It's just usually not for me. However, this book, The Romantic Agenda, loved it. A lot of my enjoyment of The Romantic Agenda had to do with the characters, particularly Joy. I saw so much of myself in Joy. I loved her as a character. She felt very relatable. And again, I empathized with her highly and I saw a lot of myself in this character. But the other thing that I love about Claire Kahn's writing is how she approaches asexuality and how she wrote her two asexual main characters in the book. And I think within those two characters, Claire Kahn did a really good job of showcasing what asexuality can look like in different people. I think one of the big issues and one of the stigmas people hold against asexuality is they think it can only be one thing and it can only mean this. And I see Claire Kahn writing against that and fighting against that in her writing. And that was something that I really enjoyed reading. Claire Kahn is definitely a writer whose books I'm going to continue to read. I actually have one of her other books, Let's Talk About Love Up Here, that I definitely intend to read this year, as well as hopefully getting to some of her other books. Those were the 7 questions, 7 months, we're in July, in my mid-year book Freakout tag. So, I'm going to tag Amber. It's your turn. Once again, if you are not subscribed to my friend Amber, go over to her channel. I will link it below. But Amber, I tag you. That is my mid-year book Freakout tag. Feel free to answer any of these questions in the comments below, or just let me know what books you are really excited about for the rest of 2023. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Give a like, give a subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!